Welcome to Excel and Business Math video number 10. Hey, in this video, we got to talk about division, fractions, decimals, and percentages. Are they all the same or are they different? Now, we'll look at this awesome diagram in just a moment and talk about division, fraction, decimal, and percent. Here are our topics. And of course, one of the main things we'll do in this video is talk about percentages and percentages number formatting. And this little diagram right here, which we will create and study, will show us the pitfalls of using percentage number formatting. Now, I want to go over to the sheet DFDP1 for division, fraction, decimal, and percentage. Now, we have a tax rate rule here, and our tax rule says you have to pay 6 pennies for every 100 pennies. That means every $1 or 100 pennies, you have to pay 6 pennies. Now, we'll say it's a sales tax rate, but of course, it could be an income tax rate or any other type of tax rate. Guess what? When we take 6 divided by 100, we could write division. We could have a fraction. There's the decimal. That's the answer for the fraction or the division. We can even do it longhand, and we still get this answer or a quotient or our decimal. But what's this? This is a percentage. This is how we usually see a tax rate or a profit margin, 6%. It does mean 6 pennies out of every 100 pennies. But whereas this is division using numbers, this is a fraction, which is division using numbers. This is longhand division using numbers, and this is the actual result, a number. This is not a number. That is a formatted representation of these numbers. Now, let's just do a little testing here. If I come up here and change the tax rate to 7 pennies, sure enough, all of this changes. I'm even allowed, if I were the tax person, to charge you 100 pennies every time you spend a buck. Oh, look at that. We take 100 divided by 100. Oh, the decimal would be 1, because anything divided by itself, of course, is 1. Because what is division? You're asking how many of the denominators are in the numerator. And guess what? 1, when you format it as a percent, is 100%. We can even change this to more than 100. 150 divided by 100, well, that gives me the decimal 1.5. And if I were to format it as a percent, I would see 150%. Now, this was just a fun preview here to show you all of this. These are numbers doing math operation. But that right there, as we'll see in just a moment, that is formatting. And we'll see how to convert a number to a percentage in just a moment. But first, let's go over to our PDF notes. You can download them below the video. And we want to talk about page 2. Here's our division. The 6 is the numerator or the dividend. The 100 is the denominator or divisor. We could write it like that. We're never going to do that again. We could write it like this. We're probably never going to do that again. Here's how we'll do it. When we create formulas in Excel, we'll take some formula input 6, divide it by 100. Now, all of these are divisions. All of these ask the question, how many 100s are there in 6? I'm asking the question, how many hundreds are in that 6? Now, this is all division. That's the only one that's a fraction. Oftentimes, we think of fractions as parts of the whole. If the quiz or test was worth 100 points and you got 6 of the 100 points, you only got some of them, part of them, 6 out of 100. Now, when we do these divisions, then we get a decimal, a quotient, the answer. We write it as 0.06. As we talked about a couple videos ago, that's the hundredths position. Now, that makes sense. If we look at this fraction right here, that's 6 parts out of 100. That's why they call it the hundredths position. But now, all of these are numbers. When we jump over into percentages, we're no longer talking about a number. Percents represent how many parts in 100. So when we see 6%, if that's the tax rate, that means we pay 6 pennies for every 100 pennies. If we're talking 6% profit, that means of every $1 that comes into your cash register, you get 6 pennies as profit. Now, really, when we jump from numbers over to percentages, percentages are formatted, symbolic representations of numbers. This is the formatted version. For us in Excel, we'll call it formatting, but it really is symbolic. What that means is 6 parts for every 100 parts. So if you spend $1, the tax might be 6 pennies. But if you spend $2, since there's 6 parts for every 100, $2 is 200 pennies. That means we'd have 2 6s. That means you'd be paying 12 pennies. So that is the meaning of a percentage. How many parts in 100? Now we'll see how we jump from the realm of numbers into percentages that are formatted representations of these numbers. Now first we'll see it by hand, then we'll see it over in Excel. Let's go to page 2. Here's our rules for percents or percentages. Percents are not numbers. That's our first rule. Percents are formatted symbolic representations of numbers. How to format or convert a number to a percent. First step, you multiply the number by 100, or you slide the decimal 2 places to the right. Once you do one of those, step 2 in formatting a number as a percent, you add the percent symbol to the end of the number. Here's our example right here. We want to format 0.06 as a percent. Well, step 1, we either take the number times 100. Oh, that gives us 6. Or we simply whoop, whoop, slide our decimal. There's the decimal right there. We slide it 2 positions over. That means right after the 6. Oh, now it's 6. Then step 2, we add the percentage symbol. Now, anytime you have a number like 0.06, if we multiply it by 100 and get 6, that's a completely different number. 0.06 does not equal 6. And because of that fact, we know a percent is not a number, but rather a formatting. Now remember, the meaning of a percent, how many parts out of 100. Now let's go to the next page. Now here's our example of division, fraction, decimal, percent. We've already seen this one, but here's a second one. 100 divided by 100, you're allowed to do that? Yeah, anytime you have a number in the top and the same number is in the bottom, you always get 1. Because the question is, how many hundreds are in 100? Well, there's 1. Oh, look at that. If we were to format this number as a percentage, whoop, whoop, we'd slide the decimal 2 to the right and add the percentage symbol. Here's another example. We're definitely allowed to take 150, a number bigger than the denominator, and divide it by 100. If we were to do it as a fraction, yeah, look at that. In the top, it's bigger than the bottom. When we do the division, we get 1.5. If we want to format it as a percent, whoop, whoop, slide that decimal 2 to the right, add a percentage symbol, and we get 150%. Look down here. There's a pattern to notice, and this pattern will always hold. We have 6 divided by 100 and 1 divided by 2. In both cases, the numerator is smaller than the denominator. We will always get an answer, a decimal, a quotient that is less than 1. So anytime the numerator is smaller than the denominator, the answer is less than 1. Here's another pattern. 100 divided by 100, well, that's, of course, 1. 0.06 divided by 0.06, that's 1 also, because we're asking the question, how many of these are in that? There's 1. In both cases, we get 100%. So anytime the numerator is equal to the denominator, the answer is equal to 1. The other pattern is if the numerator is bigger than the denominator, the answer will always be bigger than 1. And if we convert some number bigger than 1 to a percentage, that percentage will be more than 150%. So anytime the numerator is bigger than the denominator, the answer is always bigger than 1. Now we want to go back over to Excel, and we want to look at the sheet DFDP3. Now we have some divisions we want to make, numerator and denominator. And we want to make a formula and show a decimal or percent and a fraction. Now for the decimal, equal sign, left arrow, that's the top part, the numerator, divided by left arrow, that's the denominator. Both of those are relative cell references, so I Control-Enter and double-click and send it down. Go to the last cell, F2. Cell reference is looking good. Now, these are the answers to our division. These are decimals. Actually, if we highlight the cells and look up on the number group, it has the general number formatting. And when you're calculating the answer to division or a fraction, if you want to see all of the decimals, just leave it general. You can certainly apply number formatting. Let's see what happens when we decrease the decimal. What? 0.1. Let's decrease it again. 0. No. That's number formatting. I want to see all the decimals, so I'm going to come up to the dropdown and make sure it is general. Now, percent number formatting. Guess what? We use the same formula. Equal sign, left arrow to get our numerator, divided by, that's our fraction bar, left arrow to get the denominator. Same formula, Control-Enter, double-click and send it down. Click in the last cell in F2. Now, these are the answers. And guess what? In Excel, it is easy to format or convert on the surface of the spreadsheet the decimals to percentages. We simply go up to number group, and we use number formatting. Now, we can use the dropdown. That dropdown will always give us 2 decimals. I'm going to click Escape. That button gets us into trouble most of the time. It does add percentage number format, but with 0 decimals, and we'll see an example of that later. If you want the full control over percentage, Control-1 to open up Format Cells. And on the Number tab, select percentages. Now, we can increase the decimals. Notice the sample up here. Decrease all the way down to 0. I'm going to leave it up at 2 decimals. Click OK. That is simply a formatting on the surface of the spreadsheet. Each cell is displaying that percentage. The number formatting slid the decimal over 2 positions and added a percent symbol. 6%, 50%, 100, 150%, and 500%. Now let's do the same formula and then add fraction number formatting. Equal sign, left arrow to get the numerator, divided by, left arrow to get the denominator. Control-Enter, double-click and send it down. Click in the last cell in F2. Now, fraction number formatting is more complicated than percent or accounting or currency like we've seen before. But we're going to take a look at it. And actually, next week when we talk a lot about fractions and mixed numbers and things like that, we'll talk more about fraction number formatting. Here, I'm using the keyboard Control-1. So for fraction number formatting, you really need to come up to Format Cells Number, select Fraction, and you have to decide. Now, next week, we'll see how to reduce fractions and things like that. And we'll actually have to do some paper calculating. But once you determine what your fraction should look like, then you can come here, and there are some built-in fraction number formattings. This one shows just 1 digit top and bottom, 2 digits top and bottom, 3 digits. This shows the fraction as halves, fourths, eighths, sixteenths. You can even scroll down and show sixteenths, tenths, and hundredths. Now I'm going to choose the one at the top. And by the way, the one at the top, if you use the drop down up here, that's the only one available. So I'm going to select that and watch what happens to our numbers. Click OK. Remember, that's number formatting. The unrounded decimals are still underneath. If we made a formula, the formula would see the 0.06, not the 0 that's being displayed on the surface of the spreadsheet. We'll fix that one in just a moment. But this one worked. 1 divided by 2 is 0.5. 1/2 is the fraction equivalent of 0.5. These are fine. It displays it at 1 because they are 1. Oh, look at this. This is a mixed number. We'll actually talk about mixed numbers next week. What happened? Oh, 1 is displayed as a whole number, and then 0.5 is displayed as a fraction. And then this, well, it's 5, so it displays as 5. Now I'm going to click in the top cell F3, Control 1, because remember, fraction has a bunch of built-in fraction number formattings. If you come all the way down to the bottom, we can show this as hundredths. Oh, and look, there it is. There's our sample. So I'm going to click OK. And that's what we want. It's 6 out of 100. Now, decimal, percent showing on the surface of the spreadsheet, fraction showing on the surface of the spreadsheet. All three of these can be used in formulas. All three of them, if we multiply times 1, let's do 100. And I'm going to say amount. And I'm going to call this tax. Just for the moment, we're going to assume that here's the amount. And these are all tax rates. Now I'm actually going to copy this over. Boop, boop. And make a formula. Equal sign the amount. And I'm going to hit the F4 key to lock it. Times. And I'm going to click on that decimal. Now that's a relative cell reference. So as I copy it to the side, the orange one will move to the percent and the fraction. Control Enter. $6. That's what we expect. Copy it to the side. Click in the last cell F2. Sure enough. So I'm totally allowed to format either as a decimal, percent, or fraction and use it in our formula. Now in this class, we're almost always using decimals or percentages. Only a few times will we use fractions and display them as fractions. All right, I did a little formatting there. All right, I want to look at our last example on this sheet. Decimal, percent, fraction. Now I'm going to click in decimal, and I'm looking up in the formula bar. Well, of course, exactly what's in the formula bar is what I see here because I have general number formatting. But let's click in this cell, and I'm going to apply from the drop down this percentage. This will do percentage with 2 decimals. Now notice I see on the surface of the spreadsheet 6.00% symbol. But look at that. Up in the formula bar, it shows 6%. Now, unlike currency and accounting, if I type 12.755, Control Enter, if I come up and apply currency, it is displayed with only 2 decimals. But look it up in the formula bar. I can still see the whole number. But that doesn't happen with percentages. Now, it didn't change the number. It just does something different in the formula bar. If I select the cell and reapply general, that'll always show me exactly what is in the cell. So if I apply general, it's still 0.06. Now I'm going to Control Z. I just wanted to point out that this is one of the number formats that you can't go up to the formula bar and see what exactly is there, like you can with currency. Now I'm actually going to copy this over, type currency, tab, accounting, and I'm going to type the same number, 12.755, and apply accounting. Just to remind ourselves, it's displaying 0.76, but we could still see that up here. Now watch what happens with fraction. And I'm going to use Control 1, fraction on the number tab. And I'm going to scroll down and show it in hundredths. Click OK. So I see 6/100 on the surface of the spreadsheet. But look at that, 0.06. So percentage is a little bit strange. in what you see in the formula bar. Now that's a perfect segue to our next sheet. Let's go over to the sheet percent. Now I want to look at percentage number format pitfalls. There are 6 basic ways that we can enter a number and format it as a percent. The first way, I'm going to type 0.02 in the cell and then apply percentage number formatting. So I'm going to type 0.02, Control Enter. Now when I come up and apply drop down percentage 2, no problem. If 2% is what I wanted for a tax rate or a discount, that works. But watch this. This doesn't work. I click the cell. I see General. Now I'm going to type a 2. Control Enter. People think that 2, when I apply the number formatting, will show 2%. We can already see the preview right there. When I click that, wow. So that won't work if your goal was to have 2%. If your goal was to have 200%, then that works perfect. Now here's another kind of discrepancy with percentage number formatting. I'm going to highlight both cells and pre-apply percentage with 2 decimals. Now watch what happens. When I type a 2, because a percentage symbol pops up, you know that it has been pre-formatted. That means that this will end up being 2%. Control Enter. It's 2%. Now think about that. I pre-formatted it and I typed a 2. If I now go and remove the number formatting with General, it is really 0.02. Now I'm going to Control Z to leave that as a trail. Here's the other crazy thing. I've pre-formatted it. I can see. Now if I type 0.02, when I Control Enter, well, that turns into 2% also. So when you pre-format it, it does something slightly different. You could type a 2 or a 0.02. Another great option is if you have just one percentage to type in, you can actually type 2.5. Now, if I hit Control Enter right now, whole number 2 and 0.5 will go into the cell. But if I type a percentage symbol, I am telling Excel I want to format this as a percent. Now, I actually didn't hit Enter yet. I should have shown you before. It was General before we type this. But now when I Control Enter, it shows percentage number format. So you automatically know that the actual number underneath there is 0.025. And if you don't believe it, apply General. And there it is. Control Z. Now that's very handy. That's called format as you type. The last example is if you have a decimal, 0.025, Control Enter. Here's another one of the more common percentage mistakes. Just like up here when someone types a 2 and then tries to format it to be 2%, that won't work. Well, people do this all the time. And then they come up here and they see the button, so they're, of course, like, I'm going to click that. And immediately they freak out because they think their tax rate is 3%. But remember what we said. That button will add the percentage number format, but with 0 decimals showing. You can look up to the formula bar. Whew, the 2.5% is there. All we need to do, if we accidentally click that, if we want to see all the decimals, and you do want to show them, because showing 3% instead of 2.5% is misleading for the user of the spreadsheet. Now, on some reports, that may be appropriate, but not like when we have a tax rate. Then if you click that button and make a mistake, you can simply increase the decimal. All right, so those are some important number formatting, either pitfalls like this one and this one, or some hints like pre-formatting or format as you type. Now let's go on to 2 examples where we're going to use percentages in formulas. Calculate deduction with decimal or percentage. Now, we've already typed in 0.062. And later when we do payroll, that's a famous tax rate. That's the FICA tax rate. If you have a job in the United States, you're almost certainly getting FICA tax taken out. For every $1 you earn 6.2 pennies are being taken out. Now I'm going to go up and apply from the drop-down percentage number formatting with 2 decimals. All right, now let's build our formula. I already know I have to use round. This is money. I have extraneous decimals. I'm adding all the formula results down here, so I'm using round equals round. Tab. Left arrow to get the relative cell reference for gross pay. Times, and I'm going to up arrow, left arrow, F4 to lock it. That needs to be locked as I copy down. Comma. I'm dealing with pennies, so the number of digits, that's a position to round to, we type a 2. Close parentheses. Control Enter, and copy it down. Now, we already saw this, of course. If I come up and apply general, it is not going to do anything to the formula. The formula doesn't care whether it shows up as a decimal or Control Z. You format it as a percentage. Now, in business, it is much more common to have percentages for discounts, tax rates, profit margins, things like that, than it is to show the decimal. Hey, I forgot. I'm going to come down here and F2, verifying that the cell references are correct. All right, that's our first example. Let's look at our second example. We'll scroll down. Math, percentage example 2, math word problem. Your goal is to contribute 4.5% of your annual gross earnings to a savings plan. If your annual gross earnings are $65,391.50, how much should you contribute in the savings plan? Hey, I've already listed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You should memorize these. We just learned them for the first time last video, but facts and formulas. This is just like Excel's golden rule. List all the numbers and the labels. The only difference is you might have some relevant facts like information about whether you should round or not. Stating the goal, solving, checking your answer, writing in words. This methodical approach to solving math problems leads to fewer errors. Now, the last part, answering in words, that's common when you are creating a report or sending an email or communicating the answer to someone. All right, so we're going to list the facts. Our goal is to contribute 4.5% of your annual gross earnings. Notice the word of. Last video, we learned certain words represent math operators. Of represents multiplying. So we're going to take this 4.5 times the annual gross earnings. Now, the 4.5 is a number we're going to need here, and then our gross earnings also. So I'm going to click down here. All right, I typed out formula inputs, label them, and even put a note about the word of down here. All right, now our goal. Our goal, calculate how much to contribute to savings plan. All right, and then down here, I'm actually going to copy and paste because our goal is this will be a one-step calculation. Control Enter, I'm going to add home, alignment, word wrap. Look at that. It went way too high. Excel does that sometimes. Look at that. I'm double clicking. I don't understand what's going on there. Now let's try it. All right, our calculation of, that means multiplying. So I'm going to say, hey, there's all the earnings times, and this percentage, 4.5%. That means 4.5 parts for every one. Remember, we're dealing with money. So that's 4.5 pennies for every $1 in that amount. When I hit Control Enter, there is our answer. Now, there's extraneous decimals. We are dealing with money, but I'm never going to use that formula result in any other calculation. So I'm simply going to come up, drop down, and add the currency number formatting. So there it is. Now, how do we check this? Well, notice what do? We multiplied these two things. You can see the formula right off to the side. Well, we could actually do this a few ways. How about we take that part as the numerator and the whole as the denominator? If we divide these two, we better get exactly 4.5%. Percentage contribution, equal sign. There's the numerator. That's number formatting. The unrounded decimals are still underneath there, and we need those when we're checking. Divided by, and there's the denominator. When I hit enter, whoa, as we talked about last video, it sucked or pulled the number formatting through the cell reference. No problem. Don't get tricked by number formatting. As soon as we see that, we say, oh, forget it. I'm going to go up and apply general. And there it is. There's the decimal equivalent of that percentage. We could format it if we want. I'm going to leave it as a decimal. Now we answer in words. My goal is to contribute 4.5% of my total gross earnings, there it is in parentheses, to my savings plan. And so the amount I will deposit is $2,942.62. All right, there are 2 homework problems for you to practice. And in this video, we did 2 math examples where we actually use percentages. We talked about pitfalls and tricks for entering percentages or formatting numbers as percentages. We also talked about general number formatting, percent number formatting, and fraction number formatting, and saw a formula where all of these were equivalent underneath to make our calculation. We also talked about the fact that percent number format is one of the strange number formats where you can't look up to the formula bar to see what's actually in the cell. We compared that to fraction, decimal, currency, and accounting. And when we were over in our PDFs, we saw a couple important handwritten notes that compared and contrasted division, fractions, decimals, and percents. We talked about the rules for percentage. Remember, percents are not numbers. They're formatted representations of the number. And what's the meaning of a percent? How many parts of 100? Now, if you like that video, be sure to click that thumbs up, leave a comment, and sub, because there's always lots more videos to come from Excel is Fun, including next video, video number 11, where we talk more about fractions. All right, we'll see you next video.